Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start off today talking about snow, and I want to take you back to Friday's map, looking at how much snow did come across the central part of the United States. Now, we covered the huge snows that were in the west, and especially down into California, but early in the morning on Friday, we hadn't quite gotten all the data in to see just the size of this snow swath here. We knew we still had winter storm warnings out for this area, but now that the weekend has passed and all the data are in, we can see widespread 6 to 12 inches of snow through this area. This was a huge but very focused snowstorm. And yes, I do want to be very clear. Some of the models picked up on this early last week. If you went back and watched my video on Monday, I said, hey, we've got something coming through Nebraska, getting into Iowa, Wisconsin. We did not know the position of it until we really got later into the week, but pretty good forecasts picked up by the models. But many of you probably were looking at your apps on your phone and probably were a bit surprised by this. And that was because there were such model differences. And we need to talk more about the model differences coming up in just a few moments. The other thing, if you remember on Friday, I said, gosh, there's this system trying to come up the East Coast. And some of the models were just absolutely clobbering this area. I said, watch this all weekend. Well, most of us meteorologists woke up on Saturday morning seeing the trends from the overnight runs on Friday. And we watched the European model kind of cave back to the GFS solution all along, which was for a much, much bigger storm system hitting the Northeast. Now, that's not shown to you on this map, but I want to show you what's going on. This was yesterday afternoon, just as the sun was setting. And this is a monster, a powerhouse of a coastal low here. Now, it is still raging early this morning, but what made this possible was all of the high pressure that hugged the backside of this. That is what the real deal is. Whenever you're talking about a coastal storm system, you have to focus on the high pressure, because that will what is ultimately going to be able to bring this system in. And now I drew an arrow to show you where the high pressure is, but you got to remember the flow around that high pressure is like this. And that's what helped to pull this system up the coast and bring very, very heavy snowfall in here. Now, some of this started off as rain, very cold rain, but made the flip over last night. A couple of other things of note here on this satellite animation from Sunday afternoon. We can see what are likely controlled burns down here in parts of Arkansas, and I saw some more down in kind of in the panhandle of Florida here. But I do want to show you that snow swath right through there. And again, 6 to 8 inches around Lincoln. I mean, we saw over a foot that came through this area. Very, very heavy snows after what had been, just almost record hot 10 to 12 days before this. It is also good to see better snow here on the ground up in Montana. This is one of our kind of big drought concern areas right off the mountains here, which was a very productive region of Montana. Okay. From there, I do want to show what's going on this morning. This is our all hazards weather map, but if we just kind of take a closer look, sorry, I zoomed in pretty rapidly there, but we still have blizzard warnings out for much of New Jersey, getting over here to New York, also up in here in parts of Connecticut, Massachusetts. And if I just zoom back out here a little bit, you can see winter storm warnings still exist on the backside of this system, all the way down to parts of the Appalachian Mountains getting into West Virginia, and then another very, very cold set up down here in Florida where they have both freeze warnings and red flag warnings in place. And this is for strong winds, but very, very cold temperatures. And given the drought that's been in Florida, that's why the red flag warnings are there. But if we just step this back out, we also have very strong winds coming off the mountains we're going to be paying attention to this week as well. All right, so that's kind of our setup. Since I mentioned the winds, let's go have a look at them real quick. Now, again, it's this area, this large complex of high pressure, all right, that is making this possible, coming up the coast like this. And that's what we missed so many times this year. Every time we saw a coastal storm system forecast by the models, there was no high pressure in this area to make this happen. But in this particular case, on the backside of the low that left, this one way over here, which actually left its frontal boundary right there to kind of daisy chain into this one, and have a look all the way down here through the Tejano Pass. The winds are going through. That setup allowed for high pressure to build in, and that's part of what made this system, the powerhouse that it is. Now, on the backside of this, very, very cold air has made it all the way down into Florida. We have another day of very cold air in Florida. I'll show you more about that in a few moments. But as we go forward in this forecast, a lot of my attention is going to be given to this. All right, let's take you over to the Pacific. We've got multiple lows that are out in the Pacific, and this is where the Pacific high is currently sitting, large Pacific high south of the Aleutian Islands. And what this is doing overall, because of the presence of high pressure just off the southwest coast, is many of these systems are kind of going north, but I'm going to be watching for them to linger at times in this area. And there is some hope in this forecast to get something out and moving across the country, not this week, but next week. And I'm going to tell you why I think that's so critical to be watching what's happening here in this kind of complex of lower pressure that still sits off of the west coast here in the northeast Pacific. But back to the system going up the east coast, this is just the winds, although we actually call these the weather observations this morning, the METAR reports. And we can see very heavy snow. I see gusts out here in like Cape Cod of 61, a lot of 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts in this area, making for a very rough day. Now, if you were farther into the interior, of course, we had snow showers for most of the weekend. I'm talking about this section of the eastern Corn Belt or the eastern Great Lakes. But right now, I'm going to keep focused on these winds throughout the day today as we're expecting gusts after we just dumped quite a bit of snow. I don't know the totals as of yet, as this is an ongoing event. But we're looking at 40, 50, 60 mile an hour gusts continuing. Now, if I blow this back out, I want to show you some other stuff I've been working on. So I've now created kind of our own radar animation, and it looks something like this. So we're going to get this loaded up, and now you can start to see just precipitation type and intensity. And what I'm excited about, I can't wait to release this to you when I get it all finished. But you can see some of the snow showers, even some lake effect snow showers coming around the backside of that low. But you'll be able to kind of zoom in and get real-time radar data. And I'm actually working on individual radar stations. Just so you know, the product you're looking at here, it's a composite product that's put out by NOAA and the National Weather Service through something called MRMS. Now, you've probably been pretty familiar with MRMS because I like to show you maps from the MRMS that look at total precipitation, for example. Now, we see these all the time. But what they also have is a product, it's been around for a long time, that gives you every 2 minutes an updated national radar scan with precipitation type information as well. So we're going to have this, and I'm also working on individual radars. So if you're in, just imagine you're in the middle of, the spring severe weather season, and you're in Ohio, and you need to see the radar at your location, not the composite. We're going to have that for you as well. But that is still a powerhouse of a snowstorm, and it's going to continue into the northeast for much of the rest of today. Let's zoom this back out, though, and just have a look around the rest of the country as we keep an eye on what's coming through here in parts of the northwest as well. Again, we need all of this in the northwest. The northwest, I'm going to compare to California later, but I need more snow in the end of February, month of March, okay, that time frame to finish off their water year. All right, California, you're okay, but up here, I need more. All right, let's go back to the models here. Let's flip this back over to the high-res NAM, and we'll get the 6Z run this morning, get all the frames loaded up for you. Let's just play forward. So a lot of snow coming around the backside of this. This is by midday today. And we're going to see that by this evening, the snowstorm is gone, but the winds on the backside are still going to be problematic. Now, you saw the coastal lows. This is what we're talking about here, all right? And they continue to deliver moisture into an area that desperately needs more. We've got to finish off this water year in this area. The winter. It's not the water year. The water year doesn't end until September 30th. But we need to contribute to the water year with better flow into the northwest. And that's why I like what this system's doing. Look at that in the northwest. Good snows in the northern Rockies, Cascades, we're adding it up. There's more rain coming into Northern California. Again, we don't need this here. It's been extremely wet as of late, but we're getting more of it. Now, you also notice there's a clipper coming out of parts of Manitoba, putting down some snow in Winnipeg, which of course has had a major flop in temperatures lately. And that little clipper is going to go right over Lake Superior and find its way through this part of Ontario. And then we think by midweek, this is Wednesday, spreading more snow into parts of the northeast. All right. At that point, midweek, we are keeping an eye on what's coming through today in the northwest, kind of some of it moving out into the plains. We're going to take a closer look at that in a few minutes. But I want to show you one last variable on this before we switch over to a different view here. Wind gusts. As we just look at how strong these winds are, look, there's the influence of high pressure. Look at that right there. There's no wind. Same thing up here. But if we take a look at this going forward, those plains are going to be replaced quickly this week with stronger winds. And we're walking into, very similar to as we did last year, a windy early spring. And now the question's going to be, as we bring these winds back down into the southern plains, which last week we saw, now winds much stronger than this, but we saw windy conditions deliver this major risk on fire. We're going to have to talk about what that's going to mean here. These downslope winds coming off the Rocky Mountains and that risk of fire. because I did pull up the latest U.S. seasonal drought outlook. Now, this was updated on the 19th last week. What was that, Thursday? And I want to note that the newest outlook did put more of the western and high plains into the drought development likely category. We see improvement north, improvement Midwest, but there's a lot of the Four Corner states and plains, and then as you get down here into Texas and along the southeast, that is still in their risk area. There is certainly an issue with overwinter drought. I mean, we keep looking at this every single video I make, but these are the precipitation stats going back to basically December 1st. And there's a lot of area that is still lacking in moisture that needs more and more, systems coming through. Now, this only goes up to yesterday morning, but it just shows you, the lack that we have in many areas with wintertime precipitation. And that's why the red flag warnings are out for Florida. It's been so dry. Doesn't matter that it's cold, there's wind, and that's going to give major risk to wildfires down here. Okay, just giving you more stats. This is month to date, so this is the month of February. And we, again, look at parts of the Delta. Come to this section of the United States right here, and we continue to see significant moisture deficits, and that's one area that has very low soil moisture at this point as well. Okay, is the next week going to help us out? This is the newest update from the Climate Prediction Center. So I just showed you where a lot of this is coming from. That's in the next 3 days. We do have the system exiting. There are clippers coming through, and we're going to take a look at where this moisture is coming from. But my eye just continues to be drawn to these large areas where week in and week out we see drier conditions. Now, I've asked something of you the last few weeks. I said, all right, every spring, I always get this worry. It feels like every late winter and spring, I'm like, oh gosh, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and then farther north, sometimes into Nebraska. Not every spring, but we just sit here and look at the dryness, and I get very worried about how that translates. And many times later in March and in April and May, this just fills in. We've got questions if that's going to happen. I'm going to try to answer that at the end of this video, but I want you to know what my current concerns are. Because over the next 10 days, I don't have a lot. We have what's going on now. Clippers coming over the top. I'll tell you more about another storm system going through the Northeast. But if you come into this region, we are still on the drier side of average. Now, why I told you to be watching here is because some of the forecast models, let me get you out to that next image. There it is, right here. In fact, all three of my major models that I'd like to use for week 2, plus the Climate Prediction Center, have got this going on. Now, that's not going to bring in additional moisture here, but we did just put snow on the ground in this area, which is good. And we got to take a look at what is creating this feature, because this is desperately needed. And again, this is that day 8 through 14, like March 3rd through March 9th time frame. Let's go have a look at it here in just a few moments, because the overall pattern looks something like this. You just average out the next 15 days. I see a lot of northeast Pacific ridging. I see the location of the Bermuda High off into the middle of the Atlantic here. So flow is going to want to do this. All right, that's that clipper track again, and this is going to be overall more stagnant, but there's something tucked away in these next 10 days that may have its origins right here that gets out. So we need to get in there and have a look at it. I'm going to show you several models this morning. This is the GFS's interpretation. So troughs and ridges. So this is the deep low this morning. There's the lows that are paired up off the coast. We're going to play this quickly, all right? See the clippers coming through? That's what they're doing. They're just following this broader lobe of vorticity in the lower atmosphere and plus the cold air that's there. Okay, so we get past that. Now there's another one coming through here, but this one takes a much farther to the north trajectory. So we're going to be watching all week long. Temperatures go over more mild here after this. Now, as we play it forward, this is what I'm curious about. March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Look at that. See this guy right here? This system seems to be wanted to, well, watch it again. March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th coming through Southern California. And it just seems to kind of want to reinforce something out here. March 5th, 6th, 7th. And we have ridging to the east, which means we're going to likely get something out of this. All right, now I've switched models on you. I'm going to go back to the European model because I'm curious if it also delivers some sort of system in the midsection of the country. You just saw it in the GFS. Let's now play this forward. Okay, we're watching one system exit, snow on the backside. We've seen this. This is all from the high-res NAM. It had it pretty well. There's the clipper that goes over the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. There it goes. And what we're curious about, and this is in both models, I'm rocking back and forth on Wednesday the 25th into Thursday the 26th. And there's a little system that sneaks through here. See this? And as that system comes through, there's going to be an interesting transition, I think, right in through here that I want you to watch carefully for maybe some icing potential. Now, when are we in time? This is this Thursday. Okay, we'll just keep an eye on that. Maybe Wednesday night into Thursday morning based on the current timing. There's too much high pressure, cold air to the north, and it's going to undercut this. But watch this system. The models are trying to take this, spread all this rain down through here. This is this Thursday, and then maybe more snow. Now, the GFS is more aggressive on that snow, and that pulls through. Notice where the next clipper goes, much farther to the north. And that's because we are watching a rebound in temperatures here going into this weekend. But high pressure dives in, and that's going to already replace by March 1st and 2nd cold air across the north. And I'm going to be watching again a complex system, snow, sleet, freezing rain coming out of the west. But it's after this that we're starting to pay attention to the risk of heavier rains in this area. So this is all that to March 3rd. Big Arctic high coming back in, more snow into the northeast. As we play it forward, too fast there. That's March 4th. And here it is. This is this odd little setup in the southern plains with snow in the Midwest that could be bringing in that moisture that I mentioned. And that is moisture through Texas, the Red River, Arkansas, areas we desperately need it. Now we're way out there in model la-la land, but you saw it in the ensemble a moment ago as well. And I'm just very curious if the models have this right. Now, do you please understand, I'm at 360 hours in the forecast, but we saw it in the ensemble, so we're going to have to give it a nod. All right, let's look at some other variables. How about we come in here and flip this over to total snowfall first, since we saw some snow out of this. All right, we're still adding up a ton over here today in the Northeast. You saw that a moment ago on the radar. All right, let's keep going through. See our clipper track? Remember, we're adding to this late this week. All right, now playing forward. Look at more of this Great Lakes, Ontario, Northeast snow getting added up here. And man, I'm just going to show you 15 days. I shouldn't do this, but hey, I love it. I know you don't, but I'd love it if it landed like this. We don't need more snow in California, but the snow in the Northern Rockies, Northern Cascades are needed. Snow in this whole area, fantastic. We could get the snow, get it to melt as we get into more of March, and that would be great. The Northeast, honestly, we don't need more snow in the Northeast, but it would help to cure the drought issues there. And as you saw, down here was rain. Let's go have a look at that rain real quick, and then I want to show you another model. Sorry, QPF. So let's get these frames loaded. There we go. Now look. All right. Got to pass to where I'm loaded here. Just keep going. There it is. Now that is what I'm curious about. Sorry, that'll always reset. I got to fix that little bug. Right there. Now take note. There are still dry pockets in this. But there's something coming into this area that I think we just need to put on our kind of watch list for the next several days. That's all. That's what we need to think through. Let's do another thing here. Let's get off of this. Let's go in to see if there's model support in the ensembles for this low. By the way, I just want to show you. This exists because of all of that. Look at that high pressure there. Okay. What we're doing here is we're using the European ensemble. We're headed to Tuesday and Wednesday. Look, there's the clipper going through. That's good. Tuesday into Wednesday. There's good ensemble support for that. We then see our system that comes out on Wednesday. This is the one that tracks right through this area. Gets into the Northeast. That's a deepening low. That's what could possibly spread some more snow into the Northeast, although we've got to watch the track of it. Then as we know, the next clipper, this would be this Friday, goes up into Ontario. According to all the models, it's in the ensemble as well. Now here's what we're watching. This is next week. High pressure dives in on Saturday. Low comes out in the northern plains on Sunday. What I'm curious about is the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Here we go. Is there something down south in terms of low pressure? And there is. So I think there's some sort of support in this. Now, the problem is it really baked in with all that moisture? Because over the next 10 days, this map shows the probability it's staying under a ½ inch of total liquid equivalent. But you know that next system's like on March, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So if I add that in, I'm just starting to see more of this erode away the farther we go. And once again, the models are keeping part of the Canadian Prairie, the Northern Plains drier, the High Plains drier, but it is trying to revive some moisture into this area, okay? And just for completeness, sorry if this has taken a while, look, you've got CPC, European model, AI, and the GEFS, all with that same feature into week 2, all right? So that, again, March 3rd through the 9th, that kind of time frame. Okay, on to temperatures. Up until last Thursday, we were just incredibly hot in the midsection of the country. But over the weekend, so from Thursday through this weekend, look at how much this has changed. And that's the pattern shift. That's what's driving the big system up the northeast. And all this warmth you see down here, that has been replaced. It was funny to watch Orlando. Orlando's gone on this roller coaster ride of temperatures. And just a reminder, back in early February, on February 1st and 2nd, we had temperatures down here where the overnight lows were in 24 degrees. That was a Sunday and a Monday. Build-up of warmth since then, but this is going to crash right now. And I just want to tell you something. If you use this on ag weather, I need to change this. This is not year-to-date. It is January 1st up until 2 days ago. I always have a 2-day lag on the quality of the temperature readings. I want them to be right, so I wait on the PRISM data to get that right. So there's always a 2-day lag on it. But take a look at the temperature change this morning. You saw it. You saw the Tejano wind. You saw the Arctic air coming down. Temperatures have dropped off significantly. And now we have a frost risk down here, pretty far to the south. And mainly this is coming in tomorrow morning. But can I take you back to St. Louis? Because I want you to see 2 stories here. The models agree, warm up going in toward this weekend, a little bit of a cool off over the week, early next week. But look, the GFS and the AI model, very mild, going from March 5th to March 9th. The European, which is the model we just looked at, is cold. Major split out here. And these models do this a lot, especially this time of year. So we need to get in there and have a look at it. I'm going to start with minimum temperatures. Here's minimum temperatures today, getting into tomorrow. All right, there we go. This is tomorrow morning. That's our main frost morning down here. Temperatures, again, Orlando 34, up around Tallahassee 25, 27. Pretty chilly air. But we're watching this. Clipper comes through again, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday here. Cool up north, but very mild to the south after this. And this is Friday morning's lows, getting into Saturday and Sunday. We saw the next Arctic blast coming in at that point. So there's still some very, very cold air across the north with this after what had been so mild. Let's quickly look at those max temperatures, starting off with today, getting into Tuesday. Look at that, 81 in Amarillo. Still very hot in Texas. That's Thursday, getting into Friday this week. Another major warm-up, but this is going to be replaced by Saturday and Sunday. So look at that. 66 in Lincoln on Friday, 40 on Sunday. So we're just in that time of year. But the question I have is when I look out there at the models, look at the difference between the spread in temperatures. This is every day from the GFS, and we're out here toward, this would be the 24th, 25th, 26th. Look at the warm-up, and then quickly replaced, cold air out of the north, mild over the Four Corners states. This is March 2nd into March 3rd. Now, let's just stop it on March 3rd. This is, well, look at this. That's what the European says on March 3rd. So if I'm in, Green Bay, I've got 13 degrees colder than normal here, and I'm 4 degrees warmer in the GFS. And it's much, much more dramatic farther to the south. So I want you to see that there is some pretty significant model spread as I keep going forward into the 4th and 5th and 6th. I mean, look at March 6th. Quad Cities 23 degrees above average, Cincinnati 21. And if I come over here to the European model on the 6th, it's got the eastern United States back into the freezer, while the European model is much more mild in parts of that area. Or excuse me, the GFS. So please understand these models are all over the place with temperatures, which they typically are in spring. So I often like to, let's go look at the ensemble. But the ensembles wash this out. That's day 5 through 10. This is day 10 through 15. And you just notice, it just seems to be mild here. And then there's Arctic shots there. Yeah, okay, that seems to be what the ensembles are saying. But you're going to be quite frustrated with your temperature forecasts going forward. They're going to be highly volatile with this current setup. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. I've got a few more things I want to show you, and then we'll be done here. New week 3, week 4 outlook, March 7th through the 20th. Look how warm the CPC went for most of the country here. That's also keeping the Four Corners of California dry, the Southeast dry, Northwest wet. They've been calling for this to be wet for months on end, and it has just not verified quite like this. That's not a criticism of the CPC. I've done it too. We keep seeing these signals But I'm telling you that the Northwest, especially the snowpack, needs to increase. So let's go look at that and try to make sense as to why. The MJO is down here in phase 3. That is supportive of the pattern you just saw. But I'm not seeing the MJO jump back out over to these colder phases. It's not doing that. And the polar vortex story I gave you on Friday, not much change in it over the weekend. So if we kind of extend the temperature forecast, here's the next 7 days. If we take this out, this gets us out there today, 7 through 14, so week 2. If we can take this out further, this is week 3. And this is that forecast that the CPC gave you with very mild conditions through the middle of March. But for some reason, and we got to be careful with this, not only does the GFS extended do this into week 4, that's week 4, but watch week 5. That's out there, like for many people, spring break toward the end of the month. I mean, we're getting close to Easter here, and it just wants to reintroduce a lot of colder air. Now, cold air at the end of March is much different than cold air at the end of February, but it is not just in the GFS. It's also in the European extended. If I take you over here and show you the 7-day sliding window on temperatures for them, that's that same time period. Now it's mild back here, like the other forecast. There you go. That's your week 3 forecast. But then it just does this, and I'm just gonna tell you there is precedent for it, but I've got to be cautious with it. I will also show you that most of the models are going much drier in the west, drier in the plains, but really lighting up this area with a lot of wet weather. And that's been consistent with some of our analogs, except for in California. When we stitch together all of our analogs for the month of March, we are wetter here, drier in these areas, and wetter there, which everything else lines up except for what's going on in California. By the way, California, I just want to show you something. We're currently at 119% of average on historical average to this day on water in the reservoir system. That's 28.4 million acre feet. And if you have a quick look here, every single reservoir monitored on this particular web page is above their historical averages. So that's why I don't need California to have a miracle March. But I'm going to call this into question. We've been monitoring the collapse of this La Nina. Matt talked about it last week. This thing is collapsing faster than I've ever seen a La Nina collapse, at least in recent memory. I mean, it's just dying a very, very fast death. And if you look, just since January, we've already seen these temperatures warm up about 3/4 of a degree. That's fast. It may not seem fast, but water has high thermal inertia. This is very, very rapid change in temperatures here over that stretch. Now, I'm going to jump ahead. I just want to show you something. With this much, so get rid of this, okay? And just see how warm both of our major oceans are surrounding, well, North and South America. And I do that because I'm questioning why the June, July, August is just so wet with a lackluster southwestern monsoon. I mean, this model right now is just wet everybody. It's just stormy. And I think it has a lot to do with the feedback of having very warm oceans being forecast. That's a lot of evaporation off the ocean. So there's going to be moisture to be had. I'm going to tell you, you have to look at this and assume that it's not going to be right. Because that's not the way moisture's ever been delivered in the middle of summer. I've never, ever seen a summer where it's like, oh, you know what? Everybody, except for you, Arizona, gets rain. So I want to be careful with this, okay? Next couple of things. We already looked at that. Let's go here. My analogs for spring. So I jumped over to summer. Can we just come back to spring for a moment? Interestingly enough, April to May had wide open planting windows in here. That's the analogs. It was wet south, but wide open planting windows. One of the issues we dealt with was we tended to linger colder to the north through a lot of April. Mild south, but colder to the north in the month of April. That could be an issue. Bigger picture, what does April look like in the model individually? Well, it's wetter here and it's wetter there, a little drier in the southeast. And then you go into the month of May, and it doesn't have any strong signals, although you could kind of just say it's kind of got a wetter look here. Now, that is the opposite of what I just shared with you in the forecast, right? I mean, this area isn't wetter when you look back at the analog forecast, So I've got things to digest here, and I want to tell you, uncertainty is going to be high until we finally get into a spring-like pattern. We're not going to know. None of us are. Anything we do, all of us meteorologists, telling you we think we know what spring's going to be, is a fool's errand right now, simply because we are tucked away in a winter pattern with a rapidly decaying La Nina. We're not going to be able to do this well for you. All right, just understand that. All right, long video. Let's wrap this one up. This is the newest outlook, April, May, June, from the CPC. We looked at it briefly last week, but I needed to show it to you again because it's trying to keep its driest conditions here. And that's about the only strong signal it has. In fact, it's trying to break the drought in the southeast. So that's 3 different models. One is analog, one's European, one's the Climate Prediction Center, and they all have a different solution. So that's where we are. Okay, how about something else? Can I blow it out to the rest of the planet? My analogs for April, May, June. There you go. You saw this. Wetter south, wetter plains. If there's one thing I think will happen, I think Indonesia is going to be dry. I think we're going to have a weak Indian monsoon this year. That is, if I had to put a stamp on something today, that would be the most conclusive thing I could tell you given how quickly this La Nina's dying and El Nino's showing up. What about this, though? I mean, April, May, June, this is critical for safrinha corn. Let's go have a look at it. First of all, soybeans coming out at the same pace they were last year. We're well ahead of the 5-year average. Corn coming out at the same pace it did last year. Nothing concerning about this right now, but I still think there's an issue with corn given how the planting went of the first season corn. That's about 25% of their total corn. I'm going to have to continue to monitor that. We've been keeping an eye on these drought issues down in parts of southern Brazil, but Paraguay and down into like Buenos Aires, into Uruguay. But rains came through here in a big way. Severe storms came through here this past weekend. And take a look at that. Look at all that additional rainfall. But just so you see here, this is some places picked up 3 to 4 inches of rain in this area. But the models are still doing this. Next 2 weeks, they've gone back over drier, which means if you didn't grab the weekend rains, you've now gone several days without moisture. And they're extremely wet to the north, which may start to hamper the pace at which other crops or safrinha crops are getting planted. I just think we need to watch this carefully. All right, guys, that is it. I hope you have a good rest of your Monday. Matt's going to pick it up tomorrow. We're going to keep building this long-range story, and we'll just deliver. All right? You have a good rest of your day. Be safe. We'll talk soon. Thanks.